Hello, everybody. This is Joshua Hatton with One Nation Under Whiskey. I'm joined today, and as always, by my good friend, my business partner, the dear Mr. Jason Neal Patrick Harris Johnston Yellen. And we are graced by the one and only Jessica Rabbit Guillermo Lomas. How you two?
Hi.
Hello.
Was that a deliberate pun on Grace? I thought you'd line that up nicely.
I did. I added that in.
Nice.
Do you like that?
I did,
Every once in a while, I do things on purpose.
I feel like
that was one of them.
Going into 2026, as we are, the rabbit in my name has become a 2-time feature.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's because, it was that first episode of the year, right? Because when you start a new month, you say, rabbit, and that's when we launched, and then we remembered, you are Jessica Rabbit Guillermo Lomas, and now I can't say Rabbit Guillermo Lomas. I have to say Rabbit Guillermo Lomas.
It just I'm just checking that I'm hearing right rather than I've developed an internal stutter. That's okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Really, we just need a name that takes as long to say as Jason Neal Patrick Harris Johnston Yellen.
Well, I'm worried that's where we're going.
Jessica Rabbit Guillermo Lomas, you're getting into that rarefied air.
I need a long name. Anyway, so here we are. This is an annual tradition that we've been doing. Is this our third year? No, this may be our fourth year. I don't know, Jason. I do this every fucking time. Every time. How many times?
Sometimes he does things on purpose, Jess.
But we have an annual tradition of bringing in Susannah Mother Effin Skiver Barton to the team to discuss our year in preview. So it's time to welcome the one and only, the preeminent Susannah Skiver Barton.
What an introduction.
Welcome.
Thank you. I do like how everyone here, even without your additions, Joshua, we all have at least triplicate names, right? What you need is a second surname. I think you and Haida should just, you need her surname as well. And
I do need her surname.
That way we can all match.
I should be Mueller Hatton.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Yeah.
So I'm curious for you, Susannah, if you think Guillermo Lomas is Jess's given name or
Obviously.
walking around the world name, or if you think it's Jessica Rabbit Lomas is the given portion here.
I genuinely couldn't say. I just assumed that she's Spanish. Because when you go to Spain and you have a double-barreled surname that doesn't have a hyphen like yours, Jason, everyone treats you like it's the most normal thing in the world. Same in Mexico, any Spanish-speaking place. And then everywhere else in the world, people get real confused. They're like, your name's Susannah Barton? I'm like, no, it is Skiver Barton. I should have just put a hyphen in. It would be less confusing for the English speakers. Anyway, I don't know. Jessica,
somebody with a hyphen going without it had some appeal.
Guillermo, for those people who have only onboarded recently, welcome. This is your welcome meeting. Guillermo is a reference to a trip I was now some years ago. I'm not going to count them because I'll embarrass myself. But I was in Finland and I was in a coffee shop, and I really, really like coffee. And they had coffee by a roaster that I quite enjoy, but they named the growers of the coffee on the label. And it said Guillermo. Lomas is actually my surname. And it was grown by Guillermo Lomas in Ecuador. And I was just like, do you not think Guillermo Lomas sounds like the most amazing travel show host? He looks like the man from Del Monte. He's got a white linen suit, crisp fedora. And I think I must have told these two, and it just became part of my name. So I like the idea of having some exotic Spanish heritage. I am the whitest person you'll ever meet, so some sort of ability to tan would be lovely. My dad did our family history. We're all miners. We literally were designed not to see daylight. So I'm not entirely sure where it comes from. It is Spanish for small hill. But I've never met a Lomas that I am not related to. So, and there's not that many of them either.
Well, so Guillermo is probably a distant cousin of yours.
Yeah.
For sure. And I'm going to work out how to make that coffee heritage part of my story going forward so that I can add another skill set.
Geek. These things are adding up.
Yeah. See, if he was a Colombian coffee grower, I would make it my 2026 mission to go and visit him. I really want to go to Colombia and drink coffee. I'm worried that when I tell people I want to go to Colombia, they assume I have other itinerary activities planned. So,
that is
whiskey in
their
Colombia.
Prejudice and not yours.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You ever thought about going to Venezuela?
Not recently. But Greenland's starting to look
Jason
pretty
just
shaky
took
as
us
my next
right
holiday.
there.
Wow.
I'm only over here asking questions, Susannah.
Really glad that we're not discussing rum on this podcast right now.
We went straight into the deep end here, Jason.
Yeah,
Right as well. There's no time to waste these days.
Right.
Just gotta cut to the chase.
Yeah. Okay.
By the way, you asked at the top, like, how many years have we been doing this? It's at least 4. It might be more than that.
Yeah.
I'd say that's a famous
leaning in on the
list
number
right there. Could be more.
Is this our 10th year doing this in our 9th season? It's our 10th year doing it in our 9th season.
Have we not always just done this even before there was a podcast?
Exactly, yeah.
Exactly. But it's an episode that I look forward to every single year. And here we are recovering from 2025. Maybe
Are
not
you?
recovering?
Not.
No, I'm still. It's like an open wound. It's an ulcer that has an ulcer, and we're entering 2026, and so we're going to discuss predictions. Maybe discuss what your 2025 predictions were, and see what came true, what didn't come true. And go from there. So I'm going to step back a little bit. I know, Jess, you did some pre-listening.
Yeah.
And
we call it research.
No, research. Yeah.
Just to see
I
how
like the
wrong
term
we were.
pre-listening. Yeah.
That is why I did it. I did it because I was like, we can't possibly have been that wide of the mark.
We weren't. I did some pre-listening as well. I got cut off at like the last half hour because the baby woke up. But the one thing we did get wrong, I'm sorry to say, is that Taylor Swift did not take advantage of the oversupply of bourbon to launch her own brand. But it's not too late because we're going to have an oversupply for several years running, and she could still come around.
I think maybe she was just on
Jim
tour, so
Gaffigan
she
on the bingo
missed.
card?
Yeah, I think maybe she just, she missed the episode when it dropped because she was kind of busy with her world tour. So, I think the offer remains open that if she wishes to seek the advice of 4 people very qualified to discuss it, she knows where to find us. She can email the podcast, as I'm sure she could. Or she could have her people email the podcast. I'm very disappointed she didn't take us up on that. But
it's not too late,
from
though.
the podcast, it's not too late. It's not too late, Taylor. It's just a half-hour conversation.
With Haida being the ultimate Swiftie, she would be so happy if we collaborated with Tay-Tay on Single Cask Nation Presents Tay-Tay's Bourbons. There you go.
You need a
You heard it
slightly
here first.
snappier name for her lineup of whiskeys, but I think you're onto something.
Yeah, we'll workshop it.
we can workshop it.
Yeah.
Surely Tay-Tay's taters it's just right there.
Tay-Tay, oh my gosh, Tay-Tay's taters. Tay-Tay's taters.
It's just right there.
It's right there. It's right there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
You need potato-related marketing ideas. This Scotsman has got your back.
I was going to say, can we get a tie-in with Tato crisps?
You're right.
Or chips, as you call them, to like really round the whole thing up. I feel like the Mr. Tato and Tate would just be the collab the world didn't see coming.
Right. Just a mistake when you do.
My mind is running wild.
Vodka.
Did she have any tour dates in? She must have had at least one in Ireland or in the north, right? Did she go to Dublin?
Yeah, she came here.
Okay. All right.
She must have
country,
got loads of
right?
potato crisps.
Yeah, but Tato being so very Irish.
Well, it's such a massive brand.
Did you guys know that Tato, Mr. Tato, and the actual formula for the cheese and onion Tato crisps is different in Northern Ireland than it is in the Republic?
Yes,
What?
obviously.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know
This blew my mind when I found out. And then the first, last, and only time I've ever been in the North, I did a Tato taste-off with several other people, blind tasting the two different countries' crisps to see which ones were preferred. I'm not going to tell you what happened because I will inevitably I will offend somebody. So
I was going to say we could draw some political lines early on in an unexpected way and make it about Tato crisps because I too have a preference. So they are also the presentation, the marketing is different. So you can't eat them and think, oh, I wonder which. It's very obvious which side of the potato line you're on. I have a preference. And I was eating Tato crisps last week because I was at a little sneaky outturn preview for the next SMWS release. And Fran, the ambassador, Fran and Anna, had paired them with crisps. And it was great. So Aveen in our office had brought in a generous donation of Republic Tato options. Xiao Chen brought some Taiwanese wasabi crisps. They were good. We had some... Anna is Swedish. She brought some dill chips, which are my, least favourite Swedish crisps.
Oh.
And...
Jessica.
they're meant for aquavit.
You know how I feel about
checks out.
everything dill, fennel, aniseed. What else do we have? We had some lovely Serrano ham, which I'm sure are Iberico ham ones. And the weirdest crisps on the table were fried egg crisps, made by the same company. It's called Torres. They're a Spanish crisp brand.
Interesting.
I feel like I'm a crisp ambassador now. They're a crisp brand from Spain. Fried eggs, I have seen them in Good Spirits. They sell them. And Sarah's not convinced me to participate in them. So having them at this... because they're quite expensive, right? They're like £5, £6 a bag. I mean, these are expensive crisps. But having them at the tasting meant that I could try them before I commit to money on a bag of crisps. And I think the only way I can describe them is they absolutely divided everybody in the room. You were either really into them or really not. And all as whiskey enthusiasts and people who participate in the production and presentation of whiskey, we spend a lot of time trying to not find a sulfur bomb. So all the sulfur you've ever taken out of every whiskey you've ever tried was put into these bag of eggs. They are the most dangerous thing.
You did not like them.
So here's the really bad bit. I know that if left alone with a bag of these, I would eat every single one of them whilst going, so eggy, whilst continuing to shovel them in my face.
We've all been there.
So I would be ashamed of myself at the end of it, but because they're really sulfury, eggy to start with, and then they go kind of like sweet potatoey at the end. It's a very odd experience. So experiment at your peril.
I'm intrigued now. I would pay a lot more than £5 to try that just for the novelty. But it's neither here nor there because I'm sure if they made their way to the US, they'd cost like $20. Tariffed to death.
Probably get them in Trader Joe's.
Tariffed to death. Yeah.
I'm giving you a
don't mention that
segue.
word.
Joshua had
Exactly. Yeah. Speaking of tariffs, ooh,
there goes the rest of the episode.
Wait, before we get to the tariffs and the bad things, I have some other follow-up things from last year's episode.
Are they crisp related? Okay.
Not crisp related, but I was making a little mental list as I was listening. One is that, do you two have any medical issues you'd like to report this year? We spent a lot of time talking about your colonoscopies.
So I did think about this in anticipation of coming here. My wife is 1 month away from her colonoscopy, and I made an error in our last recording, which was I put the call out to men. Susannah jumped in and said, also women. And I have thought about nothing else through the rest of 2025. So I thought I would lead today by saying my wife has scheduled hers and we are celebrating this news.
I imagine your wife is delighted you just shared that with our listenership.
Hugely.
Yep. Hugely. Just goes straight up her ass, right? Just goes, shoot, little camera, the whole thing.
No follow-on questions at this time.
I will report, I just had a root canal.
That's not a colonoscopy though, Josh.
No, it's
same access point.
Though.
Same access point though. Yeah, exactly. Same. They go straight up my ass and it just goes through the mouth.
Is that why medical bills in the US?
But they said that's how they do it, so I believe them.
I've always said you talk shite.
I willfully led us astray there. Sorry, listeners. Second, I had said that I didn't know anywhere where I could try the Sir Davis Beyonce whiskey. And it turns out the answer to my question was Japan. That's where I had it. I had it in Japan. I had to go to Japan to find anybody with an open bottle of Beyonce whiskey, and that's where I found it.
Ooh la la.
I found it quite pleasant, but I don't know if I felt like I needed to rush home and buy a bottle of it.
It
was
pretty
nice,
pricey.
but it wasn't the most rye-iest rye that I've had. So maybe I wanted more.
That was the idea.
I mean, it looks pretty cool. And then I'm going to introduce my favourite thing that Susannah said in the whole of the recording, because it made me chuckle as I was listening back. She said that for 2025, it was going to be a double undies time. And before we hit record on this, I said, how does that feel in 2026? Just FYI, if you were wearing double undies last year, I've got 10 pairs on today. So...
and there's a seg.
So Joshua, what were we going to talk about? Why am I wearing 10 pairs of pants?
Oh boy. So all right. So just before we got into this, Jason, Jess, and I were having a little conversation. And we were talking about something that President Trump had mentioned, and he had said that he was going to impose some additional tariffs on the UK because they were siding with Greenland, because he wants Greenland for the US, and he was going to put an additional 10% tariffs on the UK and all UK products. And if they don't change their minds on Greenland, come June, that tariff will increase to 25%. Did you see that in your crystal ball, Susannah, mother effing Skiver Barton, when you were thinking about 2026?
Well, I don't want to. Let's not devolve into politics here.
Yeah. I wanted to frame this. I didn't want to frame this as political. I wanted to, the idea is tariffs, right? And, if we rewound the clock to his first administration, we found ourselves in a predicament where we had 25% tariffs on European wines and whiskeys from the UK. And then the Biden administration put a pause on them, didn't make them go away, just put a 5-year pause on them. And then Trump was elected once again and then did a 10% tariff on UK spirits. And then this became just a whole new wrinkle. And just anyway, this was just news that was thrown on our laps like 5 minutes before we hit record. And so I just wanted to, you said you wanted to segue. Here's our segue.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I haven't heard anyone talk about with regard to the tariffs is how they're actually playing out. So like at the beginning of 2025, in that first quarter or so, after Trump took office, the tariff conversation was just whiplash. It was like one day there were, crazy tariffs. The next day he was like, well, I'm going to not do these tariffs for another 3 weeks while we negotiate things. And the next day, more tariffs. I mean, it was just back and forth and back and forth. There was no real he didn't commit for a while to a lot of things. And so, I can't imagine for importers what that felt like. I think there was a lot of breath holding and sort of dog paddling waiting to see how things shook out. But like we're now a year into this, and at some point, right, the importers had to make a decision. Like,
sure.
And what decisions did people make? I think it was probably different calculus for individual companies, but the end result is that I think, I'm going to guess, if anyone's tracking it, and surely some economists are, the data is probably still pretty muddy and opaque, because there were a number of ways, I imagine, individual businesses could have chosen to respond and could still choose to respond with this latest threat. I mean, you guys bring in whiskeys from the UK. You probably had to make a lot decisions that were unpalatable. And I'm sure you're considering what you have to do next about that. And
that's a very kind way of putting it, unpalatable. I did read a report by the Scotch Whisky Association who were talking about I think we're still too early in the year for them to have wrapped up and be publishing reports from 25. But there was a report that said, or at least I've seen it quoted in several places, the SWA claiming that the sector, now I'm not sure if the sector, when they mean that, is just whiskey or if it's food and drink exports from Scotland, but I think if the SWA are quoting it, I suspect it's spirits related sector. They claim that however they've calculated this, these tariffs are costing the sector £4 million a week.
Wow.
Which is quite a number. I don't have enough fingers to do that quickly. If you add that up in a month and then make that a year, is quite £4 million a week is big numbers, if you ask me.
Can I say something cynical? I think the SWA might also use the tariffs a little bit as a smokescreen for larger issues in the sector that were going on long before this White House administration, came in. I mean, we talked last year about Scotch whisky's struggles, how exports in 2023 were the same as they were in 2013, and it's in the SWA's interest, right, to find an easy cause to point to about declining sales or declining exports. But I think there's probably a little bit more to it than tariffs. Not saying like they don't have the math to back up whatever they're claiming, but they also are famously not that transparent about how they reach these numbers. So I would take it just with a little bit of salt.
There's they talked about the value of the exports falling, so that I don't think it. This comment and this statistic is, in general, it's not specifically related to just the US. I imagine it factors into these figures. They're saying the value of the exports fell something like 3.7% in 2024 compared to the previous year, but the volume of exports has risen by nearly the same amount, which I think is interesting. So that went up 3.9, but the value fell 3.7 in the same period. So there definitely will be some influence in there in the US, but as we had discussed, like you say, it's not just going to be the US tariffs, but it's such a big market for Scotland, it can't really be ignored.
Yeah, but it is, seeing volume go up while value goes down, we all know means people are trading down and buying less expensive bottles. And that's certainly a trend I think we're seeing across the board in whiskey of all styles, in all spirits. In the last 2 years, I have seen for the first time ever people talking about depremiumization. Whereas for the from like 2009 or so, I think premiumization was like, wow, everything, people are trading up, everything's getting more expensive, people want to spend more per bottle, they want to drink better. All that is true, and we all thought that was going to go on forever, but it's clear it can't go on forever when people are being squeezed and their budgets are constrained. So I find that very interesting as a macro trend. That's not just about whiskey. I'm sure it's being reflected in other consumer goods industries as well.
Well, and this is very much one of the questions I wanted to ask you, Susannah, which is, we often talk about whiskey as a product of the people, and we talk about the tradition and the history. But then whiskey has moved into this premium echelon, and we're seeing collaborations with sports cars and fancy watches and things like that. As you're moving around whiskey circles and talking at various levels of that, what do you see as the appetite for those type of luxury collaborations?
I mean, with the people I hang out with, very little. But you guys are the kind of people I hang out with. I imagine you don't really, you're not like, oh, I want the $10,000 Bowmore that, partnered with Aston Martin or whatever. I was thinking about this the other day. I really want to flesh it out into a pitch for a story. So other writers who are listening, please don't steal this. I'm going to work on it. My brain isn't fully fired up yet, from the maternity leave. But again, looking at macro trends that are much more than whiskey, it seems that a lot of the consumer goods world is now bifurcated, and you have a great many companies pursuing this pool of individuals with a ton of money. I mean, we're talking the millionaires and the billionaires, the people with, who just have all this wealth. And then there's everybody else. And it's not to say that everybody else is getting shit. Like, there's plenty of good, affordable, excellent quality whiskey out there for those of us who have regular incomes. But so many companies are pushing efforts, toward the luxury consumer. And that luxury consumer is just a really tiny number of individuals in the world. And eventually their tastes are going to move on. If they're into Scotch whiskey right now or bourbon, they probably aren't going to be into it forever. Certainly their kids aren't going to be into it. And so then what's going to happen to the companies that have sunk the lion's share of their research resources and sort of marketing output and courting of consumers into this tiny class? Like, I think they're gonna wake up one day and look around and realize they have no one to buy their super expensive collaboration Rolex whiskey, and they've completely neglected the people who were buying the rest of the portfolio, and those people have moved on too. We all love to hate on Macallan. And I don't know that this will truly happen to Macallan, but I think I see it happening a little bit. A lot of people have sort of moved on from Macallan being this aspirational whiskey, or even the whiskey that they want to buy, because Macallan has spent a lot of time in moving in these glittering circles. And I don't think they've done enough to make themselves, I hate to use this word, relevant to the average whiskey drinker. But I don't know. Macallan's probably still laughing all the way to the bank. So, but I will say this, it bums me out tremendously to see brands whose whiskey I love for what it is, really great whiskey, sinking their efforts into these silly, hyper expensive bottles that are designed for, again, the Bowmore Aston Martin collaboration. I'm just like, who is this for? It's not for me. It makes me not. I haven't picked up a bottle of Bowmore in years. Not because I don't love Bowmore, but because I don't know. I look at my Isla whiskey selections, and I'm like, I really want to have Kilchoman because this is so corny, guys. I'm sorry, but Kilchoman cares about me. Kilchoman,
yeah,
they actually want to make whiskey that I can drink and that people like me can go out and buy a bottle of. And here on the Kilchoman, small family owned, they actually genuinely do care about you. But even Diageo brands, I still want to go and drink Lagavulin because they, despite some, I think, silly pricing decisions during COVID, Lagavulin 16 hasn't quite gotten out of reach in terms of budget. And it's, it's still a tremendous whiskey. And I don't know. Is Bowmore still as good as I thought it was? When I was last I was super into Bowmore maybe 12 or 13 years ago, and it's been a while since I've gone back to them. I don't know.
Guillermo Lomas may have an update.
I am a sucker for a Bowmore. I also am probably also a bit of a sucker for an Aston Martin Bowmore. So, yeah, yikes. I really love it. I think it suffers the same problem as a lot of other whiskies do, in that I think the standard core range doesn't really show you the true capabilities of it. But if I'm in an airport and they're dosing out that 10-year-old that they put in travel retail, yeah, I'm taking some of that because it's delicious. So, like, it's not... the three of us were just discussing this earlier in a meeting about... I am always very aware that I live in a very privileged niche of a niche of the whiskey world. I live in the cask strength, independently bottled single cask world, and that's not really where the majority of whiskey drinkers live. So sometimes it's nice to just kind of zoom back out a little bit and go back to core range stuff. I get a lot of shit for loving Glenfiddich 12, but you can shove it whilst I laugh myself to the bank because it's very cheap and I can drink it with ginger beer. Ha! I think, it fills a purpose. I just recognise that that's not me. The very fancy collaborations of whiskey and these fancy cars. I like cars, I appreciate it's also not aimed at me. I'm not driving a DB7 just yet. And I think it's an escapism, isn't it? A whiskey is a luxury item that is a bit of escapism, and it's just that everybody's escape looks different. Sometimes it's people who want to be with flashy cars and ironically can't drive those whilst they're enjoying the delicious whiskey. That's what I always find so dumb about this.
It always has weirded me out, these car collaborations with whiskey companies. I'm like, but you can't even hint at drinking and driving.
You can drink the whiskey and watch somebody drive the car, or you can be in the car and collect your whiskey at the end. And most of these cars don't have boots for all the whiskey. Anyway, not very well thought out. There are no women in these decisions.
Thank you. This goes back to my long-standing soapbox, which is companies that are doing collaborations with fashion, whiskey companies and fashion companies. Like, please do something for the ladies, or at least gender neutral. So because we do see a lot of these sort of like trendy sportswear or fashion or like boots or whatever. I see a lot of these sort of collaborations with whiskey companies, and it's always stuff for dudes. And I'm like, who's spending money on clothes? I mean, I know men do, but sorry, women do a lot more.
Yeah. But isn't the whiskey company's answer wives? Like, isn't that where they're like, women will buy it for their men, or
for
their men will ask
I don't
for
know.
it. Like,
I want to buy it.
I wonder if
myself.
that's what keeps them myopic.
I think you can walk. It's an absolute nightmare. It's probably why I'm not in marketing. There's a very fine line, right? We've got like over here, sexy cars, driving fast, aspirational, sexy watches. And then they're like, okay, well, oh no, shit, we need to think about ladies. What is it ladies want? And then, last year at the top of the year, Johnny Walker decided they were going to be very ahead of themselves, and they collaborated with Sabrina Carpenter.
I was just going to ask, yeah.
Who, those pictures made my blood run cold. There is like nothing relatable to me with that campaign whatsoever, and it's worrying to me that I'm like, I identify with these stupid watches and the high-end cars way more quickly than I do with a woman in a, albeit like, incredible dress. I mean, she looks incredible. Good for her. That doesn't make me want to drink Johnny Walker. If anything, I'm like, they've kind of misunderstood yet again what it is that people who want to drink whiskey look like. We've gone straight back to the Madman era of like, sexy ladies gets you sexy whiskey equals success.
I think that's what they wanted to do. I don't think Sabrina Carpenter was for the ladies.
Yeah, so that was my question. Who was that ad for? Because I didn't see the ad. I just saw pictures, and all I saw was a pretty blonde woman with a bottle of whiskey, and I just assumed it was men and it had nothing to do with women. I said, so much for Jane Walker.
Right.
That was my initial reaction when I saw that.
Oh my God, Jane Walker. Wow, what a trip. That was almost 6 years ago.
Yeah.
That was right before the pandemic kicked off.
If they were trying to be very clever and very tongue-in-cheek, I could see an argument for it, but I still think it's how is it that there's a huge swathe of people drinking whiskey who are what I think we would call like normal people, who don't have these kind of highly aspirational existences? Why are there no ad campaigns for people who are just together having a nice time drinking some nice drinks? Or is that because that part of me wants to say, as a complete contrarian, that the closer you get to normal people, whiskey drinkers, then we're entering into a very dangerous realm of like the drink responsibly campaigns, because I guess if it's a mad aspirational thing, you know, nobody's going down to an Aston Martin dealership with a boot full of single cask Aston Martin, wearing 6 Rolexes and driving away with a DB5. That's kind of like silly made up. But if it looks like the 4 of us getting together and having a whiskey, then maybe then we're kind of getting into the, we can't be... I've just done my licensing exam today. It's why it's on my brain. About, you know, can't allow children to be nearby. Shouldn't be exposing children to this controlled substances that is whiskey and alcohol. Maybe
the
that's
UK is
more
much
difficult.
stricter about that than the US, though. Like some of the controversial ads that people have complained about to the Portman Group, you know, where it's like, this ad shows that whiskey helps people get laid or whatever. You know, I'm like, what? This would be totally fine in the US. And I don't know, we could, this is a discussion for another time, but I'm like, I think it's okay to have an ad that shows like when you're at a bar, you're drinking whiskey and you see an attractive person and you guys go home together at the end of the night. Like that seems fine to me, but you know.
Meanwhile, in the UK, we're cancelling.
Sounds aspirational.
I had a question, just to shift gears a little bit. I had a question regarding trends. And, you know, I'm in a few different groups. One of them's a Facebook group, and one of them's a WhatsApp group. And the Facebook group that I'm in is a bourbon group. And the bourbon group was this sort of, well, actually, there's a few different bourbon groups, right? And it's these bourbon groups where, you know, last year or maybe a year and a half ago, everybody was all about the hot bottle that came out and they were going to pay top dollar. And you know, it didn't matter what the MSRP was, they will pay 10 times that. And people wouldn't shut up about it. And I'm starting to see now people are leaving bottles on shelves. And, you know, I saw people talking about, you know, Pappy 12-year-old and seeing like that on a shelf for $2.99 or something like that, saying they expect me to pay that much for this, you know, whatever the price was, where I said, oh, that actually seems like a good price nowadays. And someone was complaining about that good price. So I wanted to talk about this trend peeling away from these sort of aspirational bourbons. I want to talk about that. And then in this WhatsApp group that I'm in, which was also a bourbon heavy group, a very different market set, but it was a bourbon heavy group that seems to be trending more toward tequila, which I found very, very interesting. Completely different flavor profiles. And I'm just curious what you're seeing here, what you think may be lying behind that. And just to be very clear, the tequilas that they're looking at are those big fuck off tequilas, you know, that are flavored with vanilla, and they have that, you know, the metal top on them. And I forget what they're called, but they cost too much, and you know the ones I'm talking about.
Yeah, like Maestro Dobel or something.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
That's disappointing. I was going to say, oh, maybe, you know, they're really into the tequila thing because of all this interesting conversation about transparency and where flavor comes from.
No.
I mean, I think that the trend of bourbon drinkers going towards tequila has been it's been building for a few years, and it comes from the insane bourbon prices of like 4 or 5 years ago. You know, how for a while, there was just a lot of really expensive bourbon, and drinkers who had been used to paying less for bourbon got tired of it, and they said, what else is out there? And they looked around and they saw, oh, look, there's a lot of tequila that's much less expensive. Let's explore this world. But if they're really just going for like the prestige bottles, and they don't seem to care that much about flavor, which if it's all sort of these additive filled, vanilla-y birthday cake tequilas, I don't know, that could just be like they're looking for a new brag bottle. Because for bourbon, I think Pappy's still a brag bottle. BTAC are still brag bottles. Like there's still these prestige bottles out there. But I don't know. Maybe for these people, like that moment has passed. If they were only ever buying it based on what they could brag about, like maybe the trend is over.
They've tasted that. They're moving on. So interesting example about like someone passing up a Pappy for a price that you, Joshua, thought was like pretty reasonable, because Pappy has always been available on the shelf if you're willing to pay 10 or 20 times SRP. I'm saying it's reasonable from the standpoint of people have always spent a bit too much, and this is the lowest I've seen it. Granted, it's more than MSRP, so I wouldn't pay it, but it's the lowest I'd ever seen it, and so I would imagine people would jump at it. And when I see people complain saying they're charging that much for this, like, dude, it's a Pappy. Like, why are you not jumping on this?
I find that so interesting. And I remember last year, because like Jess, I listened to most of the episode before we started today. I did say at one point, like, we were talking about like prices coming down and price sensitivity. And I said, any Buffalo Trace, product will be fine. It'll sell, no problem. But I was wrong. Like, Buffalo Trace has been aggressively expanding for well over a decade at this point. And so like supply is catching up to demand, it's maybe not, supply is catching up to demand, full stop. To the point where like I live in a really shitty control state, and it was very hard to find Eagle Rare or core Buffalo Trace here for years. And it is not hard to find those things anymore. They're not on every shelf all the time, but there's way more availability than there was in the past. And anecdotally, I'm seeing that throughout the country. Blanton's prices, this is mostly a vibe because I haven't done any kind of analysis, but 3 or 4 years ago, Blanton's was, people could easily a retailer could ask $200 for a bottle of Blanton's and find someone to pay it. These days, I think that is happening far less. There's more Blanton's available. It's not to say again that it's not going to go back to the days when it was like $50, but it's not $200 anymore. Or if it is, you are overpaying, and you can find cheaper Blanton's out there. So stop paying $200 for it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, even Buffalo Trace, you'd never know. And I don't think they're in any kind of trouble.
So do you think it's a supply? Do you think it's a combination then of there's simply more supply? And
yes.
So, okay. So it's not just people are losing interest. I mean, yes, there's that, but it's this combination of people losing interest and more supply is available.
100%. There's no doubt that like the sales growth that we've seen since 2010 has slowed and is slightly declining for bourbon. We'll see what the numbers say about 2025. It could just be a plateau. It could have fallen off a little more. I don't think it's been a cliff. But because growth has at minimum plateaued, at the same time that supply is finally catching up, it's looking more serious for bourbon companies, and it's sort of having this effect of I don't know, seeming like it's great for the consumer who's looking for the Eagle Rare on the shelf, right? But this was one thing I figured we would talk about, because we talked about it last year, where I said that, think I said there's a correction coming, or it is happening. I think I said there were lots of small bubbles in bourbon. And we saw that in a big way last year. We saw bankruptcies. Diageo paused production at one of its 2 Kentucky distilleries. And as far as I know, that production has not resumed. They laid off a bunch of people. They closed down their Distill Ventures branch. Beam announced that they were closing one of their 2 big Kentucky distilleries for all of 2026. And everyone was like, oh my God, there's no more Jim Beam. I'm like, no, they literally have a second distillery that's even bigger. Like, not that, things, Beam and Diageo are going to be fine. But these are very big deals in the context of, up until last year, no one was talking about there being any sort of, trouble in bourbon country. And I think we're still only at the beginning of this trajectory. There will be more pauses. There will be slowdowns, just less production happening. I don't think that's a bad thing. It is a good thing. You have to match somewhat the supply and demand dynamics of this, but it looks like a bad thing if you're not in the whiskey world. I've seen a lot of like panicked articles in mainstream press that are like, oh my God, it's a terrible thing, and they're blaming Canada not buying bourbon, and they're blaming the tariffs, and like these are complicating factors, but they actually have nothing to do with like the larger story of oversupply of bourbon at a time of slowing demand.
Do you not think it's I was going to say it's a privilege, but maybe I don't mean the word privilege, but it's a form of privilege that these big companies are able to kind of slow the train a bit. They can, in the immediate effect, it's very shitty because people have lost their jobs and there's livelihoods, and that's never a good thing. But for the big companies to be able to sort of like start reining it back in a bit, as you've pointed out, it's not Jim Beam's only distillery. If you know Jim Beam and you've not just read the clickbaity headline on Facebook, that they have the foresight to be able to know that they've been overproducing. So now they're reining that back in a bit. Whereas there will be smaller companies who have also turned the taps on and gone for mad overproduction. And I don't just mean in Scotland, I mean all spirits around the world have really gone hell for leather, doubled down on production, but are not going to have the luxury of being able to pause production for a year. Because if they pause production, that's everybody's out of a job and there's no coming back from that. Whereas Jim Beam can balance people. We've seen it here in Scotland with Brown-Forman. There was a bit of a kind of accidental scandal caused because Glenglassaugh has, on the face of it, being mothballed, but it's not. Brown-Forman sort of smoothed that over by saying they were sharing production between them and Ben Riach. And so they're sharing workforces between the 2 sites. And I think even Glendronach's expansion has been scaled back a bit, I think. Don't quote me on that. And the same Diageo have paused production at Tierninnick up in Alness in the Highlands for the whole of this year, describing it as, what do they call it? It's like bringing in line normal inventory management or something, that kind of a very kind of PR speak for the sky's not falling yet. We're just, we're just putting props up to keep the ceiling in place. Don't worry about it. Business as usual. So I think it's, but my point was, I think it's the big companies who have the ability to kind of adapt before thing goes really tits up. If you're a smaller distillery, that would break you. You have to keep producing once you started getting this thing rolling, because that's what keeps the lights on. The cash flow is really the kind of the killer, I guess, at the end of the day, which is if you're massive in Jim Beam, you are shutting cash flow from one site, but that's not your whole source of income. It's some clever accountants will balance things somewhere else, some other way. But if you have a distillery and you were relying on, maybe we did talk about this last year, like massively contract making spirit for people, and those people are now not knocking at your door. Well, how do you keep that going? You don't have the option of like pausing for 12 months to review the situation. That's game over as soon as you say that, really. So it's interesting for me, this side of the fence, to be watching it. Not just here in Scotland, obviously in the US too. And I guess maybe the news about like Jim Beam and people and Balcones gets a little bit more noise in the press than some of the distilleries here. I know Inchdarney had doubled their production, but then last year we're having to lay staff off. So they'd really gone for it and then realised, okay, no, we need to bring this back a bit. I'm only using them as an example. They are not the only people that have had that, but it was in the news reports that I had been reading. Kind of people that had been like a little bit, I think, gung-ho, and then realised that the consumers they're not playing quite the same as we were all doing during COVID. So, yeah, it's interesting for me to read it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The big companies have big company privilege, and they're going to be fine. Like Beam didn't even lay anybody off. They said they transferred all the staff from the Claremont distillery, to other roles, which is great. But yeah, small distilleries, and the U.S. has thousands of them. They are almost uniformly, I think, in crisis. And making incredibly difficult decisions, have been making them for the last couple of years, will be making more this year. And I don't, it's a horrible and completely unenviable position to be in. And some will be okay and some will not. And I think a lot has to do with, there's a lot of different factors, but what I hear from small distillers is, if your product is excellent, if you have kept your focus on making really good product and, had a pretty tight sales focus, let's say like owning your home market rather than trying to expand to 50 states really quickly, then, you'll probably be able to weather it, but it's very individualized. Because each business is so unique.
Well, and on that type of topic, where we're talking America and the number of distilleries and consumers and production and supply, we're a year along from American single malt whiskey ratification now, and I know that many of us are still rah and flying the flag for American single malt, still excited, still loving the quality that is out there. Kind of bringing a few points that we're making today together, but as we're trying to get a consumer base excited, there's news coming out about closures and slowdowns. What do you see in 2026? For American single malt whiskey, when we're clearly grappling with a number of factors over here, but we're still trying to keep a consumer excited?
Right. Since you're not going to like this answer, but American single malt just has to hang on. Just dig in and hang on as best you can. I think people are feeling a lot of anxiety, economic anxiety right now. And they're less likely to take a risk on an untried product, which a lot of American single malt still is. It's still just such an unknown for the vast majority of consumers. And that's been part of its, struggle up to this point, and it's going to continue. And this is not a good time. It's not a good. I said last year, don't launch a brand in 2025, and I certainly wouldn't launch a brand or a single malt brand this year. But if you're already a launched brand, double down with the consumers love you. Who is that group? Try to find more of them. Keep talking to them. Keep them engaged with you. And be conservative about your expectations for anything beyond that. I mean, I would just say, please be realistic. If you want to survive, know that survival for this year and probably for the next few years is going to be the best you can do. And I mean, and that's not just American single malt. That is any small, fairly new independent whiskey brand in the United States. Please be realistic. And if that means you do have to shut down for a couple months in the year, or you have to, reduce the scale of your tasting room operations or something, don't try, it's just whatever you need to do, take a hard look at your business plan, right? And put that first. If you want to still be here 5 years from now, because it's a hard time. People have less money to spend in terms of their money is not going as far. And I feel like everybody is, to whatever extent, freaked out or depressed or just general anxiety about the future, politically and economically. And so in moments like that, what do? We kind of hunker down. I'm looking at everyone except Jess, who has her lovely picture barrels. We all have bottles behind us in varying states of consumption. I'm not buying whiskey right now. I bought one bottle. I bought a bottle for my 40th birthday this year. That was my Reach bottle. It was a Glenfarclas family casks, right? That I've been planning for years. I'm not going out and buying anything else right now because I got plenty to hold me over. And I think a lot of people are probably feeling the same way.
I'm curious, you've mentioned a few times about pitching to editors. Did ratification of the American single malt category move the dial for you in making pitches?
I think I got to write one thing about it, or in the lead up to ratification. A lot of people cover. They're like, wow, news, ratification. I actually do want to pitch an article for this year, kind of checking in on what's happened since ratification. I want to talk to the distillers and see if the dial has moved for them. Because I can sit here and pontificate all I want, but my opinion doesn't matter next to, what's the evidence in the real world. So my sense is that ratification, the timing came in the midst of the generalized slowdown of whiskey sales. And I don't think it probably had the big effect that a lot of producers were hoping for. That doesn't shock me because it's just such a niche little product. And it's just in 1964, when Congress declared bourbon a distinctive product of the United States, I don't think that we can see what happened to bourbon sales after that. That didn't do anything to help the bourbon industry. We like to crow about it now, 60 years later, but these are things that just take time. And I feel like I've said in the past, American single malt becoming a known quantity culturally is the work of a generation, maybe 2 generations, maybe 3. This is something where the distillers who have pioneered it in the last 10, 15 years, I think, if they're realistic, are looking towards their children, their grandchildren's generations to be the ones that have an understanding of what American single malt is, kind of just by osmosis of walking through a liquor store or entering a bar. Oh, there's the single malt next to the bourbon. These things do not happen quickly.
Once you have that article out in the world, please come on Extra and discuss it with us.
I'd be happy to. You've given me inspiration to write the pitch now.
Joshua?
Yeah, I had one more question, because there's another layer here, and I realize you may not. I don't know how much time you've got, but I had another question regarding another layer that we don't really talk about that could affect producers, and that's the layer of both importation, distribution, and retail, who in many cases owe a lot of money to banks, because they're purchasing a lot of stock and can't necessarily shift on a lot of stock. Retailers aren't selling like they used to. Distributors can't sell like they used to. They're purchasing less from importers. They're purchasing less from distributors. To your point before about, whether you're a new brand or a new producer here in the U.S., you're going to have a really difficult time trying to find a distributor to pick you up, because they're spending time trying to sell the products of the brands that they already have. You know, what do you see for 2026 for these distributors and importers who might find themselves in difficult financial situations moving forward?
I think that they will be stricter with their suppliers as far as what they're willing to take. I don't really know how the payment arrangements are. I guess you can't do consignment in the liquor business, right? They can't take things on consignment and pay you when they sell.
Certain control states actually do like a version of consignment.
Okay.
It's like a weird, they don't call it consignment, they call it something else, but that's right, few and far between control states.
I would just expect distributors to, they'll just look at what a supplier's offering, and they'll just be a lot quicker to say no unless they're certain it will sell. And I think what this will mean when it comes to like a whiskey buyer looking at the shelf is obviously less choice in traditional bricks and mortar retail. And that's not great when you're a consumer who likes to try new things. It's going to push more suppliers to look at direct to consumer options, which are of course a real shit show in the United States, and the distributors fight tooth and nail against direct to consumer, and have done for years. And they have a lot of power. They have a lot of power politically. And so they've managed to keep a pretty tight lid on it. But there are still DTC options that are 3-tier compliant for small producers to look at. And we're just going to see more and more producers, going that route because they don't have any other options. If you literally cannot get a distributor to pick you up, you can't sell your product. You don't have a business. And so, the only alternative is like, all right, we'll try some e-commerce with Speakeasy, or what have you, or selling out of a tasting room. If we're talking craft distilleries. For importers, I mean, you guys are importers, or I guess you work with an importer for your products. So you probably have much more insight into this than I do. But again, I would just assume like importers are going to be taking a very hard look at their portfolios and possibly slimming them down. If there's a cool boutique liqueur or a nifty, like a couple of single barrels. Well, single barrels maybe is not the best example, but I mean, they're just going to look and say like, am I going to have a harder time selling this? Is my distributor going to push back on me when I offer this to them? I'm not going to bother doing the work. I'm just going to tell my supplier I don't want it, and they'll figure it out from there. So in the end, it's just smaller selection. We're going to see dominance by the big brands at a level that we haven't seen since probably about 2010, 2020, because like the last 10 years, it's been a fun time to be a whiskey drinker because there's been a lot of craft whiskey and a lot of cool niche-y things. And it's all been on the upswing, and, the prospects now are just so much more challenging. That there will be less and less of that, which is a real bummer.
Well,
I know I'm such a ray of sunshine every time I come on. I'm always telling you guys, it's going to be a great year. So many wonderful things for whiskey. And I don't want to I truly don't want to leave us on a doom and gloom note.
So, okay, so then give us some bright spots. Let's end on what you see are bright spots.
Okay. I want to call out, I think there might be a real bright spot in English whiskey in the United States. I have heard more people talking about it. I see one producer in particular making a big play, which is Cotswolds. And I think their whiskey is
Great
phenomenal.
Whiskey. Yep, great whiskey.
And that gets me very excited. I'm like, okay, this is cool. Like if English whiskey can come in and just carve out a little space the way Indian whiskey has, the way to a smaller extent French whiskey has, the way like a little bit of Australian and even a little New Zealand whiskey. I think that is wonderful. It's just another little dot of diversity in our whiskey world of, in the American market. So I think that's exciting. I also think this is like maybe not as obviously positive, but I think a lot of people's palates are maturing. Particularly people who came to whiskey during the pandemic, they're kind of reaching a point where they're like, oh, if they're still drinking whiskey. And I think a lot of them are, they're understanding their palate better and deciding to move from like whatever they've been drinking for the last few years into exploring, a little bit, maybe exploring new spirits like tequila, but also maybe just exploring like bourbon drinkers, possibly exploring a little more Scotch. Or exploring bourbon,
cross his fingers,
outside of the sort of really oak forward, beefy, high proof styles that we've seen a lot of in the last 5 or 8 years, maybe going for lower proof, which I think, low proof whiskey has always sold, but it hasn't really sold among the geeks like us. But like I see Heather Green of Milam and Green putting out an 80 proof whiskey, and I pay attention.
I saw that.
I saw that. Huh. And I'll certainly speak for myself. Like my palate has undergone many shifts and evolutions over the years. I am pretty tired of barrel proof. Not like uniformly. I still love a good cask strength single malt Scotch. But I'm tired of barrel proof bourbon. My palate is tired. I am very much enjoying the 90 proof stuff on my shelf right now, because it's like that's a nice reason, and up to 100 proof too. I mean, a good bottled and bond bourbon is a treat any day of the week. But if you get much above 100 proof for me these days, I'm like, do I really want this? I'm just as liable to kind of pull back because I find at a lower proof, I'm tasting a little bit more, and I can drink a little bit more because my palate is not as fatigued. And so I think I have seen from other drinkers kind of similar attitudes where they're like, I have all these great barrel proof bourbons, but lately I just find myself reaching for whatever, this old reliable 90 proof, 94 proof, whatever it is, because it doesn't require any effort. And we all need a little, like at the end of the day, these days, the less effort, the better. Everyone's tired. We're all tired.
We're all tired.
And I think that can be, it's not necessarily like fully positive, but I think I actually think it is a positive to see bourbon and whiskey drinkers overall have like changing their tastes, evolving their tastes one way or another, because it keeps us engaged in whiskey. And then producers can say, oh, people want more 80 proof. Let me come out with, I would love to see I would really love to have a great Scotch at 80 proof, blended or single malt. A great one. I've had some good ones, but I want a great one.
Oof. All right.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see. 80 proof is still a little too low for me most of the time. Yeah. I was drinking through an advent calendar recently. It's not Advent anymore, but I don't have a drink every night. I have an infant, a toddler, but I did have a drink, and I was like, what's next in my little drawer here? And it was Royal Salute 21-year-old. And I was like, well, I haven't had this in a long time, so let's have it. And I was sipping it, and I was like, it's okay. It's not great. But it's fine. It gets the job done. Yeah. It actually had a lot of loveliness to it that I didn't remember. But I still wanted it to be more malt. I was like, please give me more of this. And maybe at 43% ABV.
I love the nose on it. The nose is
the nose was
and then it gets
absolutely
flat,
the best
right?
part of it. Yeah, and then it
exactly.
flattened out. Yeah, it's a bummer.
Well, the positive part has just ended on a down note. So. The nose. Go back to the nose. The nose
is fantastic.
What a
yes. Hey.
I don't know. Let's each try to make a positive prediction for 2026.
Oh, I like that. Okay, where do we start? Ladies first.
Jess, we haven't heard from you in a while. I have to think of a positive prediction.
I don't know if I can give you a positive prediction. I think there's going to be lots of distilleries that are still young who are getting a little bit older, and I'm excited to see what that looks like. Like, for example, our pals down the road from here at Lockley are releasing their first 7-year-old at the end of this month, so that's going to be fun. I'm really enjoying watching Lockley grow up a little bit. They had a nice little sort of rethink of their core range stuff midway through last year. Which was really fun to be at the distillery and getting to chat to them about that. So I think whilst as someone who is famously quite miserable most of the time, it's very easy for me to think about the scary bits of the world, about the idea of things I like disappearing or pausing distillation for inventory rebalance or what you want to call it. I think what I'm going to have to do is focus on the people who are still kind of finding their feet and enjoying being along for the ride. It's kind of mad to me that the whiskey industry definitely has a split between, we have lots of history, lots of very old distilleries that have got tenuous old links that have been around for ages, but it's also really fun to me to watch an industry growing up with me. So, Aaron is obviously slightly further on ahead with it, but every year I get a massive kick out of, because they also care for me, seeing Kilchoman get a little tiny bit older each fesh. Like, there's a fairly, not masses of it, but there's a decent swathe of 16-year-old Kilchoman lying around, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Because in my head I still think it's like 7. So getting to see that age and then seeing actual newbie babies like Lockley getting a bit older, 7 years old for them at the end of this month. So distilleries that I am trying to watch, I think you are on the money with the English whiskey. I've met a few people that are connected to the English Whiskey Guild, and I'm really enjoying watching English whiskey kind of growing up. It's very difficult this side of the border. I think the most skeptical market that they're going to have to target will be Scotland, and in some ways rightfully so for the slightly, you can stay over there with that, thanks very much. But the English whiskies that I'm getting to try are amazing. Cotswold are absolutely leading the charge with what they do, I think, and some Joshua Hatton incomplete list of other distilleries. Actually, the casks that are over my shoulder are at Grasmere Distillery in the Lake District. Ooh. And I can bore you senseless because I am obsessed with what he's doing there. It's the most kind of un-corporate, un-PC, far away from the sexy image we sell in the whiskey industry in Scotland, but, expensive casks and blah, blah, blah. And he's very near the Lakes Distillery, who are absolutely, they've got a bit of kind of Macallan vibe, it's very lush, glitzy experience when you go to. And then Paul keeps his casks outside, literally. They don't live inside in a warehouse. This has got liquid maturing in it over my shoulder. So there's a lot of kind of innovation and shake up of the concept of whiskey that I think in Scotland we find that very comforting and stable, and I think that's okay. But I think the rest of the world gets the advantage of they can play around in a way that we've created rules to protect Scotch whiskey that I sometimes think hinders innovation a little bit. So it's really fun watching our neighbours developing delicious stuff. I think it's fun to watch that happening and getting to try it. So yeah, maybe English whiskey is on the rise. Watch out, Scotland. This is the last time you'll hear from me. I have to flee. I'm going to have to move. I now can't go to Ireland because I refuse to declare my Tato alliance. So I'm going to have to move to Norway. Colombia. Greenland.
Where Guillermo Lomas is growing coffee for you.
He is. Well, he's in Ecuador. But
oh, sorry.
We could have his imposter cousin. I could set it up in Colombia. That'd be fun. So I think that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for innovation that is attractive and speaks to me, that maybe in a way that having jazzy Rolex watches doesn't.
There you go.
Yeah. I love this outpouring of positivity from our Yorkshire friend. This was phenomenal, Jess. Holy macaroni.
Pinching myself. Doesn't make sense.
Well, this is the one and done. By the end of this month, it's over. So it'll be back to business as usual for the rest of the year. Don't worry.
Extra negative tomorrow.
Make up for it.
Unfortunately, your positive was Scotland's going down. England's taking over. That's a bit of a bummer. I'll keep mine short. I've only got a couple more minutes. I got to be boosting over here. But I think I said this last year. I certainly said it out and about in 2025. It's a brilliant time to be a consumer. You alluded to this earlier, Susannah. All four of us are whiskey geeks, and you can get all sorts of releases. You can get all sorts of ages. You can get all sorts of price points. You can get all sorts of countries. Producers are listening to consumers. What are you looking for? What type of cask? What type of pricing? Like, as much as we've gone through this rise as consumers, it's kind of felt like, and here's what you'll have. And I think as consumers, we have this opportunity to be very vocal and to be heard and to continue being excited about what's coming out from producers. You know, when a distillery shuts production because it's overproduced, it's not going to disappear from the marketplace. We're still going to see it on shelves. We're still going to have opportunities to buy it, drink it, share it, enjoy it. And so I still go back to, it's a good time to be a consumer, and I'm excited. I've already outspent my budget in the first 3 weeks of 2026. I keep buying whiskey, a little bit to your point, Joshua, where you see a price. It's still a high price, but it's so much better than it was.
So much
right?
better.
I just bought a whole load of Bruichladdich offerings because the price on it was too good to say no to. And I celebrate as a consumer. And so that's it. That's my takeaway. Good time to be a consumer. It's only going to get better in 2026.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've got two things. Make them quick. I liked your point, Susannah. You made this, it was right around the time that Glenmorangie increased their 10-year-old original to a 12-year-old. And the idea, we're going to see more and more age-stated whiskeys and older whiskeys come out at better pricing. Prices are coming down, again, to Jason's point, and I like that. I miss the days when I can find Lefroy 18-year-old at just a solid price. And we may get to a place where we get nice age-stated whiskeys where they're affordable, and I quite like that. So yeah, so just reinforcing Jason's point of a good time to be a consumer, and it will continue that way, I think, for a little bit. And then we had Ollie Chilton on the podcast a few episodes ago, and he made an interesting point that there's a number of distilleries in Scotland that are sort of taking advantage of these slower times where they're making adjustments to their production. Where they say, okay, well, things are slowing down. Let's take a look at what we're doing with fermentation. Let's slow down our fermentation now, get a fruitier spirit, right? So they're using this as an opportunity to improve their overall processes. So down the road, we'll see even better tasting liquids. So it'll be even better for the industry as we look forward. And I really like that aspect of it. So there you go. There's my 2 points.
All right. And I'll wrap up by saying I think the surplus of American whiskey and, frankly, the surplus of Scotch whiskey is a great thing for people who want to become blenders. And there are several sort of blend, small boutique blend companies, not the boutique whiskey company, but them aside, that have emerged in the last couple of years. And I think we might see more. And that's exciting. I'd love to see blending. People have been talking, blending is coming back, or, these special blenders are recasting the blend. And that has happened on a small scale, Compass Box aside, which is a whole different podcast episode. If you want me to come on and talk about Compass Box and what the hell is going on over there, I'd love to. But
positive ending, stick the landing.
Yeah, sorry. I think there's a lot of opportunity and finally an appetite for cool blends and cool blending companies to come in and scoop up some high engagement geek consumers at last. And so hopefully that will happen this year. It would be cool.
I have a pro tip for you if you want to try cool, fun blends. I suspect they're not in the US, but I could be wrong. But if you ask one of these two very kindly, I'm sure they could arrange something when they come in March. You should go and check out what Woven are doing.
Oh. That's one I'm really desperate to try. Yes, Woven, I have heard nothing but awesome things.
These boys will have to look after.
Yeah.
Pete's, I love Pete's like mentality between what they're and how they're putting together the things they do is great, and they're very creative, and also every last one of them is delicious. So. That's a +1 vote for Woven on my part.
Yeah.
Lovely people to boot. Yep.
I definitely, yes, that's top of my list for whenever I next get to the UK as well. So we'll see.
Fantastic.
Perfect place to end this. So Susannah, mother effing Skiver Barton, thank you so much for joining us again for our 10th year in preview in the 9th season. It is always a treat, and we'll see if any of these predictions come true. Some were predictions, some were belly aches, some were, who knows what they were. But it was a really enjoyable conversation nonetheless. And so we really thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me on again. Sorry. Yeah, just thank you. It is a pleasure and a treat to be here. And when it got to be like January, 8th, and I hadn't heard from you, I was like, does Joshua do they not want me back this year? Are we not doing a year in preview? I was kind of sad about it. And then you texted me a couple days later and I was like, oh, okay. A sigh of relief.
Yes. No. Well, always, so long as you want to be here, we'll always have you here.
You're never going to get rid of me.
Good.
Excellent.
So to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us. To our viewers, thank you so much for watching. Hello. If you are not a subscriber to our YouTube channel, check out this banner. Boom. Now you have to subscribe because we have a banner that told you to do as such. So please subscribe, tell your friends, tell your loved ones, tell your neighbors. And until next week, grab a bottle of Single Cask Nation, open it, share it, and then grab another bottle of Single Cask Nation and do the same. Just keep on doing that and don't stop.
Yep.
A hip hop and you don't stop. Right?
We're not going there.
All right. All right. Cheers, everybody.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye. I didn't do that on purpose, Jess, I promise you.
No one said on purpose. I'm just saying that's where she used to be.
I was waving. It was more like I didn't know how to make myself more. I was halfway to writing you a message.
I thought you were just waving your hands in the air like you just didn't care, like all the rappers
she did.
talk
She
about.
cared a lot.
Just waving my hands in the air because I've just read the news and I don't know what else to do with my hands apart from throw them up in the air.
Oh my gosh, that's what we're talking about today, news. All right, let's get this started. You ready?
Always.